Now, since the inauguration of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, the committee says it has been working assiduously in line with its mandate as handed down by President Bola Tinubu during the inauguration in Abuja. The committee, among other responsibilities, is to advise the government on necessary reforms and also drive the implementation of such recommendations in support of the comprehensive fiscal policy and tax reform agenda of the current administration. Well, let's get some updates on the progress so far. And I'm being joined by no other person than the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. That's Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Good afternoon. It's good to have you on the program.
Good afternoon, Tolu. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I must say well done, because reorganizing a better template for tax administration and fiscal policy in Africa's most populous nation is no joke. Now tell us, where are we? How fast have we moved? What do you think Nigerians need to know as updates with regards to activities of this committee?
Yes, thank you very much. So just as a reminder, this committee was set up by Mr. President, and it was inaugurated on the 8th of August, 2023, of course, with a clear mandate to try and help our country, fashion out the direction in which we have to go in terms of fiscal policy in particular, but more importantly and more broadly, in terms of economic coordination with, monetary policy, competitiveness, economic growth, as well as, trying to connect the dots across subnational, but also with various agencies of government. Now, when we say, fiscal governance, because the work of the committee has three broad pillars. One of it is fiscal governance, one is revenue transformation, and the other one is around competitiveness and growth. So the work we have been doing, as given to us by Mr. President, was divided into three milestones. The first milestone is what we call the quick wins. The quick wins we were supposed to do within the first 30 days of the committee. That was about 2 weeks ago, and our report was ready within 30 days. We were not very lucky because the day that our report was ready, the following day, Mr. President had to go to India for G20, which is a very important international engagement for the country. And then from there, Mr. President barely spent 2 days before going to New York for the United Nations General Assembly. And now we're preparing for, the Independence Day. But I can tell you that that report is receiving attention. We are currently having various meetings. As you would imagine, we have to align the work we're doing with the coordinating minister for the economy and finance minister, as well as we now have a new CBN governor. We also need to discuss, because some of our recommendations border on collaboration and coordination with monetary authorities around issues to do with our foreign exchange, stability. How do you bring back liquidity in that market? How do you harmonize the very wide gap that we have now between the parallel market and the official market? So long and short of it is, we have been quite busy doing a lot of work. We believe that what we're doing at the moment is more around laying the foundation for the transformation we look forward to in the fiscal space. And you would imagine that laying a foundation is not the easiest thing, and it's not the thing that people will see easily. But we believe that at the end of the day, Nigerians will see the impact of our work, sooner rather than later.
A comprehensive review of tax waivers is something that was also mentioned as there is a sentiment, or let me say, what we see, the figures we have, is that incentives are gulping about 6 trillion naira every year. And if something is not working, I think we need to revisit it and see how it will work. But that comprehensive review of tax waivers, can you tell us more about what that would entail?
Yes, we want to be able to increase our revenue to GDP ratio. I should even say tax revenue, tax in particular, to about 18% of GDP within the next 3 years. In addition to that, we also want to be able to increase non-tax revenue so that overall the country is in a position to finance development, including human capital, education, and health, as well as infrastructure, without resorting to significant borrowing that's very expensive as we have it currently. So to be able to do that at the same time when there's a lot of burden on the people, particularly the small companies, the most vulnerable people, they don't have the capacity to do more than they're doing. In fact, the objective is to try and reduce their burden. So you're going to ask yourself, how do you reduce the burden of tax on the people? And at the same time, you're ambitious to raise the tax to GDP ratio significantly. And that goes to the question you've asked. So this is one of the areas we're looking into to be able to raise revenue for our country by looking at the incentive regime, whether they are import duties, whether they are corporate income tax waivers, whether they are exemptions here and there, deductions, all manners of waivers and incentives that we have. We're going to diligently look at them and be asking ourselves one very important question, which is this still relevant today? If the answer to that question is yes, we're then going to ask ourselves, is this adding value to the economy from a cost-benefit point of view? If we give away 1 million naira in incentive, there should be at least 1 million naira benefit to the economy. And even when the answer is yes, that cost-benefit analysis shows that this is okay to do it, we're also going to ask another question whether this is creating a distortion in the economy. In other words, if some people have access to the powers that be, and they can get these incentives, and the ordinary person who has committed no crime other than he knows no one cannot access that incentive, and they operate in the same market, first, that small player is already disadvantaged because they don't have the scale. Secondly, they also don't have access to the incentive. That is not the kind of nation we want to build. We will change those kind of incentives. But I have to also say to you that at the end of the day, some level of incentives are necessary. This could be incentives that are designed to help stimulate a particular area of development where we are either not competitive or where we think that Nigeria needs to benefit from it in terms of the ability to help us accomplish our economic objectives. For example, creating employment. So you may find areas such as fintech, areas where, agriculture, for example, manufacturing, will still need to receive some support. But those, incentives, whatever they are at the end of the day, will be data-driven, evidence-based, targeted, with some sunset clauses, so they're not there forever. So we think that this is a significant area where we can save some money for the country at the end of the day.
Interesting stuff. While many want to also know the composition of this committee, we know we have arrowheads from all of the institutions and all of that. We'd also like to ask how the public can support this great work you're doing, because, of course, it has to do with 200 million Nigerians who definitely benefit from this at the end of the day. So tell us a bit about the composition and how Nigerians can also support this work you're doing, Mr. Oyedele.
Yes, very important question there. So, if you think about the work we're doing, I told you about the 3 pillars of revenue transformation, fiscal governance, and economic competitiveness. So they are further divided into 5 pillars. Those pillars, dimensions, I should say. So those dimensions are around fiscal policy. They are around tax laws. This is where we are trying to rewrite the tax laws so they are simple, easy to understand, and they are up to date. And we also have revenue administration. In addition to that, we have fiscal management, issues to do with our debt, borrowing, interest rates, what should be the, ratio of deficits to GDP that's acceptable for us, not the template that's been given to us by other people, but the ones that are fit and proper for our country, as well as how do you facilitate economic growth. Now, what that means is you need, a lot of knowledge and skills that cuts across all regions, gender, disciplines, international experience, local experience, and so on and so forth. So this is the way we have put the team together. We have over 70 members of the committee, and that is divided into 5 subcommittees. So you have on the average about 15 to 20 people in each subcommittee working very hard, across different mandates. And then we have a steering committee where the head of those subcommittees will then come together and discuss the input and make sure that there's harmonization and consistency, as well as when we have interdependencies, that people are not working in silos. And that is the way we've been doing this work. And I have to commend, every single member of the committee for their hard work, commitment, and passion for our country. In addition to that, we have a secretariat, that's, kindly, provided to us by the likes of Nigeria Economic Summit Group, the Joint Task Board, and we have the Students Task Club, who are also supporting the work of the secretariat. Now, in all of this, what that means is, even at that, maybe altogether we are talking about 100 people, members, as well as secretariat. In a country of 200 million people, we cannot claim to know everything. So that leads to the second part of your question of how do we then engage? How do we ensure that Nigerians, wherever they may be, and that I mean, including outside Nigeria. So Nigerians who are outside Nigeria are also part of our stakeholders. How can they make their own contributions? So that's actually the phase we are getting into now. So we are currently finalizing the engagement plan for stakeholder engagement. We're going to be having a lot of engagement with different groups, from traders to Nigerians or people living with disabilities, with Nigerians in the diaspora, with the capital market, with financial services, manufacturing, agriculture, education. So every sector in Nigeria will have a say. We will interact and interface with them to tell us what we are doing, but also to hear from them in terms of what they would like to see. And then we'll provide feedback to them at the end of the day in terms of what they have said to us, what we're doing about it. And if we have limitations, we'll also make it very known to them. So at the end of the day, we already have a website, a dedicated website, Fiscal Reforms NG. And then we also have social media accounts, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. And then we have dedicated email addresses. We also have a dedicated phone number, although we prefer that people send messages rather than calling, and they can also do that via WhatsApp. So we'll be announcing some of these engagements in the media, including national dailies, and we'll be setting up some of these engagement will be online via Zoom, and some of them will be physical. So it's a lot of process that we have designed to make sure that every single person who has something to say will be able to have that opportunity to do so.
Interesting stuff. Should we also take this to the bank that where your committee might not introduce new tasks, or impose higher taxes on Nigerians? We'll just consolidate on what we have. Are we to take that to the bank? Because some are worried. Immediately they knew you were coming today, they sent those questions, and that was part of it. Are we going to have new tax coming in, or are we going to impose higher taxes on those paying already?
We do not plan to introduce new taxes because that would be contradictory to the mandate we were given by Mr. President, which is to reduce the burden on the people. We also do not plan to increase the rates of existing taxes, but I have to say that with a small caveat. That caveat is part of the mandate we have is to reduce multiple taxation, which currently is over 60. And our plan is to get to below 10 So if you have to repeal over 50 different taxes, you may end up with, a very pragmatic option that says maybe you need one tax that is easy to collect, that protects the poor, but brings in the revenue to replace those ones you have repealed. We're hoping that if that happens, we'll be able to gain efficiency from, harmonizing those taxes, ensuring that it's easy to collect. But overall, we're confident that Nigerians who have been doing their best to comply with their tax obligations before now, we feel the relief in terms of their tax burden because they will pay less and the burden of compliance on them would be reduced. But if they are Nigerians who haven't been paying their taxes and they've been doing everything to evade it as much as possible, those people will feel like they are paying a lot more taxes because they were not complying before, which is one of our objectives, to close the tax gap so that everybody is contributing according to their ability and capacity to do so, bearing in mind that at the moment, we have the poorest people bearing a disproportionate burden of tax contribution to Nigeria, which is an aberration. What you find in most countries is that the poorest people are protected by having even high threshold for exemption. In the UK, for example, up to £13,000 a year, you don't pay income tax. Brazil just recently increased their own threshold to an equivalent of about 400,000 naira a month. It's exempted from personal income tax. We are still at 30,000 naira. That really can't do a lot. So that threshold needs to go up so that more people are protected and they can even just earn a living or be able to at least survive. And then the rest of us who have the ability to pay will pay the right amount of tax regardless of who you are, without any exceptions whatsoever.
Finally, before I let you get back to work, are you worried about the time frame to achieve all of this? That's one. And two, how well are you trusting government to implement your recommendations?
Yeah, so the time frame is very ambitious. I would agree. A lot of things we need to do within just 1 year. But we like it that way. We actually, because we see a sense of urgency. If you need to do a task, and that task can be as simple as trying just to make up your room. If you give yourself 10 hours, you may end up spending 10 hours. If you set it to be 1 hour, you may find that you actually do it within 1 hour. So for us, it's the sense of urgency. We have the resources, we have the people. So we want to give it our best shot to see whether we can do this within 1 year. So I'm optimistic that it is possible. Second part of the question is around the political will and whether government would implement. We have seen enough of that already. We believe that Mr. President in particular, and also the cabinet of Mr. President, have been very supportive, and they've demonstrated that they're willing to support. And that even goes beyond the cabinet. Even the National Assembly have indicated their willingness to support our work. So that gives us a lot of confidence. In the next couple of days, I've been scheduled to speak to the governors as part of the National Economic Council meeting, because we think that the governors in particular are also our principals, because the reforms we're going to be introducing would affect the state, would also affect the local government. So we need them to come on board. And so far, so good. We have seen the willingness across that this is about our country. It's not about any political party. It's about our nation. And therefore, we all have that common objective of making Nigeria a better place and the Nigeria that we truly want. That cannot happen without some of these transformations that we're trying to introduce in the fiscal space, in terms of revenue, in terms of taxation, but even more importantly, in terms of the quality of spending. When government raises the money, how do you spend it to make sure that it benefits the people? We have removed subsidy on fuel. We have exchange rates and harmonization that are increasing the burden on the people. They have to also see the benefit in a way that is even more than the sacrifices that they have made. All of these are part of the mandate of the work of the committee, and I think this would interest anyone, no matter who they might be, to the extent that they are Nigerians or they are friends of Nigeria.
I must thank you so much for your time, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. There, I've been speaking to the President, Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate these updates, and we wish you and the committee all the best.
Thank you very much.